Hello everyone and welcome to Season 4 of our F125 My Team Career Mode. Yes, we're back once again in the land down under, ready for pre-season testing, where we go through all the new calendar changes, all the new driver changes, everything you've come to expect from the My Team Career Mode. And it's safe to say there are quite a few as we head into Season 4. Charles Leclerc though, obviously, if you missed out on the finale from Season 3, you've had about a week now to go back and check it out, so you can't blame me for any spoilers. 3-time, back-to-back, reigning world champion. Yes, every single season of my team I've done inside F125 has had the same outcome. Charles Leclerc getting into the final race of the year. I believe every single time it has been a championship decider in the final race, but every single time it has been Leclerc that has claimed glory. And, well, it's safe to say, heading into Season 4, Ferrari wants to try and match Max Verstappen's kind of run of 4 straight in the sport. Of course, Verstappen, 21, 21, 22, 23, 24. Charles Leclerc, so far in this hypothetical universe, 2025, 2026, and 2027. He is still joined by Lando Norris, though, ready for this season, and as you can see, we've got an all-new updated Ferrari livery, obviously taken from last weekend's Italian Grand Prix out at Monza. Of course, as always, all of the liveries used will be linked down in the description below. They're all available to the public on Overtake GG, and I would highly recommend going out and checking them out if you're on PC. But yeah, Charles and Lando at Ferrari. You know, I think for the Italian squad, why fix what is currently working so well? Obviously, first and third in the World Championship come the end of last season. A Constructors' Championship yet again to go with it. Will anybody be able to stop the Italians' reign of dominance this year? Well, if I was going to put my money anywhere, I don't think it would be on Red Bull. Of course, it was confirmed heading into Qatar last season. Max Verstappen, after coming up short so many times inside this game, he'd said, if I win this championship today, it'll be the last Formula 1 Grand Prix I ever do. He didn't win the World Championship, but he did decide that was him done with Formula 1. So, in his place, Esteban Ocon has stayed with the Red Bull team. Honestly, I think had Max decided to stay on, Red Bull would have probably got rid of the Frenchman. He didn't deliver very well, but I think they want to maintain a little bit of stability as we head into Season 4. But he has got a very exciting teammate, Kimi Antonelli. Very weak inside the F1 games. He has been nerfed beyond belief into the ground, but obviously seeing Antonelli at what should be a pretty competitive car right up towards the front of the order again, it is going to be interesting to see how much he's matured throughout his time. Obviously, the last couple of years he's raced over at Haas, but yeah, joining Red Bull now, ready for Season 4. It is going to be very exciting to see how he gets on, but yeah, the first time in over 10 years, Max Verstappen hasn't been driving a Red Bull car. It is a rather weird feeling as we head into Season 4. No more Lewis Hamilton, no more Fernando Alonso, and no more Max Verstappen on the grid. The only world champion we have is now Charles Leclerc inside F125, which, yeah, is a little bit peculiar, if you ask me. Next up, though, is going to be MasterCard McLaren. Of course, that is going to be their IRL team name next year. And we called it early. We obviously ran this livery last season. We called McLaren, obviously, MasterCard McLaren. And that is exactly what they're going to be doing IRL in the future as well. So, clearly this series is a gateway into the future. Clearly, this is going to give you guys a preview of what will happen in IRL Formula 1. That being said, though, I don't think McLaren's lineup is going to be this one. Yuki Tsunoda and Carlos Sainz, of course, both joined the team last season. They've done pretty well so far with McLaren. Of course, Yuki famously denying Verstappen 5 straight victories at the start of last season. Ultimately, that could have been the difference between the Dutchman winning the World Championship come the end of the year. But yeah, McLaren, they chalked up 2 victories over the course of last year's campaign. Yuki Tsunoda and Carlos Sainz, both good drivers inside this game, but ultimately I think, you know, lack the out-and-out speed of a Max Verstappen, of a Charles Leclerc, even of a Lando Norris inside this game as well. So, pre-season testing pace looks fairly good for them. It doesn't look like they're going to drop off the order or anything like that, but certainly, you know, I don't think they're going to be fighting for the championship the year. They were a distant third come the end of last season, probably just helped by Cadillac and our disappointing end to the campaign. But ultimately, yeah, we're going to be fighting with them this year. And here we go, obviously, down at Cadillac. Isaac Hadjar, of course, the driver that we raced as throughout the majority of last season, throughout every race last season. He has stayed with the team for the all-new campaign, but we have got a new driver lineup alongside us. Yes, Oscar Piastri, we have poached him from the very disappointing Mercedes team inside this game. Of course, Alex Albon hadn't really lived up to the hype last season, had done very, very well with Williams beforehand, but couldn't gel with the Cadillac car and team. So ultimately, he's decided to take a year out, he's decided to have a sabbatical and try to come back stronger in the future, similar to what he did in 2021. But yeah, so we've gone with the Australian Oscar Piastri. Of course, pre-season testing at his home Grand Prix. I don't want to speak too soon, but it looks to be pretty quick. I really do think if we can get the upgrades on the car early on this season, we are going to be in the fight for the Constructors' Championship. It might be the two red teams that battle for the crown over the course of this campaign. Of course, the team last year, we took 2 Grand Prix victory out in Baku, and then of course the season finale in Qatar. Let's not forget, in that season finale, we did lock out the front row on the grid as well. So clearly this team has now got the expertise, has got the speed to really fight towards the front. And yeah, I'm hoping, of course, Isaac Hadjar, maybe, just maybe this year, can join Alain Prost in a very exclusive French World Champions club inside the sport. Next up, though, is probably one of F1's most disappointing teams. Yes, George Russell did win a race last season, but Mercedes are just slowly dropping down the order inside this World Championship. Of course, if you guys remember, back in Season 3, during the middle stage of the campaign, George Russell was absolutely on fire. You know, that team was battling for both championships, and then Charles Leclerc did what Charles Leclerc does and just absolutely goes on a run throughout the end of the campaign. George Russell, I think he was left a bit disappointed by that. I think Mercedes put too many eggs in that Season 3 basket, and ultimately that cost them during Season 4. Dropping down to P5 in the Constructors' Championship was really not what we expect from the German giant. And of course, obviously with us poaching Oscar Piastri from the team, Mercedes had to go on a bit of an exploration. And they have decided to go with Pierre Gasly. Yes, a very interesting one coming from Williams. Now, of course, Mercedes and Williams do still have a bit of a working partnership in Formula 1 as well. So, you know, kind of understandably, if Williams is a bit of a Mercedes junior team, that's kind of how F125's in-game mechanics work. Yeah, not really too surprising that they've decided to try and pick up another driver with some experience. So, GR63 going up along PG10. It is going to be very interesting to see how those two fare. But ultimately, if pre-season testing tells us anything, Mercedes, I think, are going to be in for a rather tough year. Next up, though, is going to be Williams. Of course, again, obviously, they've now lost a driver from their stable. Don't think any team has changed both drivers this campaign. We've just got a lot of teams that have changed one of their two. Obviously, Franco Colapinto, I don't think he would have stayed with Williams. Again, similar to Red Bull, had their kind of lead driver not left the team, I don't think their second driver would have stayed. But because, yeah, Gasly has left, they've decided to maintain Franco Colapinto, the young Argentinian, for another season. And he's joined by Pepe Marti, who, of course, if you guys might remember, ran during Season 2 of this campaign over at VCarb. Didn't have a particularly fun time of it, didn't do very well, went back to Formula 2, delivered a lot stronger during his second F2 stint. So Williams have clearly thought, you know, he's clearly shown them what he's capable of, and they believe he is going to be a good choice to join in Formula 1 once again. So will this time round work any better for Pepe Marti? Only time will tell. Williams look to have a fairly competitive package. Normally they're kind of fighting in and around the top 10. You know, they should be getting points semi-regularly over the course of this campaign. Definitely not doing as well as they're running in our driver career mode at the moment over on Matsu gameplay. But Williams, yeah, is always a team that I kind of silently support as well inside the F1 games. So only time will tell as to how they fare over the course of this year. Next up, though, is going to be Aston Martin Honda. Of course, this all-new exciting project for the team. Lance Stroll alongside Liam Lawson last year, and Lawson's been dropped. And I really don't know why. Daddy's cash clearly obviously still pays the bills down at Aston Martin. I mean, Lawson was the better driver throughout pretty much the majority of the campaign last year. Pretty much in every single stat, whether it be points or best qualifying or qualifying average. Pretty much every single stat, Liam Lawson beat out Lance Stroll over the course of last campaign. There was one stat, though, that Lawson didn't win out on, and that was how many of your parents work higher up within the organisation. Lance Stroll 1, Liam Lawson 0. So Lawson has been dropped this year. Lance Stroll now has got a young Brazilian in Gabriel Bortoleto that has joined him, ready for this campaign. Of course, Audi seemed to have had an absolute stinker last year. Honestly, pre-season testing pace, again, doesn't look particularly fantastic for them. So he has been able to escape. Now, Sauber, or Audi, Kick Sauber, whatever you want to call them, they seem to run a pretty familiar pattern now of they hire a rookie, give them 3 seasons, and then get rid. That seems to have continued on this year as well. So Bortoleto has obviously been dropped by the team, and Aston Martin have picked him up. Now, it's going to be an interesting lineup. I think for Gabriel Bortoleto, though, clearly, if Lawson has set a precedence, he's got to do worse than Lance Stroll, which is really dumb to say, but apparently that's the way Lawrence Stroll likes to operate things down at Aston Martin Honda. Then next up, though, is going to be Haas, of course, and with Andrea Kimi Antonelli leaving the team at the end of last season, they were left scrambling. Jack Crawford maintains his seat, but for the first time ever inside this campaign, a Formula 3 driver has made it all the way to Formula 1. Nicholas Solov has made it to the top tier of open wheel motorsport. And I tell you what, pre-season testing pace, he looks very, very quick. Haas seemed to have taken a bit of a step forward as well, whether it's just the high-speed nature of this Albert Park circuit or whether it's going to be pace over the course of the entire campaign. It is going to be very, very exciting to see how they fare because, yeah, the young Hungarian, of course, the second ever Hungarian to race in Formula 1 after Zolt Baumgartner, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how he fares over the course of the campaign. Of course, Callum Voisin did technically make it to F1 during Season 1 of this career mode, but obviously I exclusively drove as him over the course of that campaign. So it is interesting that obviously we're seeing more and more F2 drivers making it to Formula 1, but now some of the F3 drivers are making it to the pinnacle as well there. That being said, Solov, based on his IRL performances, I don't think he's going to be making it to Formula 1 anytime soon, but the F125 game allows us to kind of see some of these alternate scenarios. And like I said, he looks very, very quick over pre-season testing. He could definitely be a bit of a dark horse as we make our way into this campaign. Next up, though, is going to be Alpine, of course, one of the biggest disappointments in Formula 1 in recent years, and, well, that seems to have carried over inside the game as well. Not only is their pre-season testing pace not looking particularly good, but they haven't even changed up their lineup. One of very, very few teams, in fact, I believe it was only them, Ferrari and McLaren, that have kept their lineup from last season to this one. And yeah, Behrman and Doohan here to stay once again. I don't really know why. Ollie Behrman, I've mentioned it before, he is the unluckiest driver inside these games. I think he's also the most crash-prone driver inside these games. I've never known a man spin a car so many times or have so many engine failures. You combine that with then moving to Alpine inside this game, and of course the Renault E-Tech engine is the worst and least reliable as well inside F125. Well, it's been a pretty big recipe for disaster. A few high-profile errors for our fellow Brit in years gone by. Jack Doohan just seems to kind of exist at Alpine. It seems to be EA's cruel joke that, of course, obviously he got dropped so early IRL that he's just bound to stay with Alpine for the rest of time, apparently inside this series as well. That being said, though, I really do love the livery on this Alpine car as well, but they could be changing it up depending on sponsors as we make our way through the campaign, so only time will tell as to whether we see some alterations with that in the near future. Up then next with one of our teams that failed to score a point last year, of course, is Kick Sauber Audi. Of course, Audi coming in last year. I think we were expecting big things from them. That didn't really happen. They were lucky to beat out VCarb thanks to a couple of high-profile results a bit later on in the campaign. But they have got a new lineup as well ready for this season. Of course, Audi being a huge German brand, Nico Hülkenberg rather understandably sticking with the team, but 2 F3 drivers have actually made it to Formula 1 this year because Tim Tramnitz has joined him, and this is going to be very exciting to see how the other young German gets on as well. How will he fare against Nikola Solov? How will he fare against Nico Hülkenberg? Hulk, as we've kind of seen IRL, isn't the best on one-lap pace in 2025, and that kind of has carried over into the games as well. His race pace can often be quite phenomenal, but his qualifying pace he tends to struggle with, and especially in a car that looks woeful at the start of the campaign. It is going to be interesting to see how he'll get on. Of course, Tim Tramnitz, he's got everything to prove. You know, he wants to try and showcase to Audi as to why, you know, an all-German lineup this season is going to be the way to go for them. I think they're trying to take a bit of inspiration from Michael Schumacher and Nico Rosberg. Obviously, that lineup at Mercedes back in the early 2010s. But this Audi car is a lot worse than that Mercedes one was all those years ago. I think it's going to be a tough year if you're an Audi Sauber fan inside this game. Last up, though, of course, is VCarb, and obviously a change-up mid-season last year, obviously with a new livery on the car. That has stayed, of course, with the Ford engineering, that technical alliance between the Red Bull family and Ford becoming ever stronger as well. They have got the identical lineup to last year. I mean, VCarb, to be fair to them, don't look as bad as Audi in pre-season testing. We'll wait and see kind of how the pace looks over the first few Grand Prix. But Paul Aaron and Zach O'Sullivan, neither of them were particularly inspiring over the course of last year's campaign. I don't expect big things from VCarb. Honestly, again, if I was a betting man, I would expect that it's going to be them and Audi that don't score points, which is a bit of a shame. It would be nice if kind of momentum swang a lot more inside F1 25. I know they implemented, obviously, the kind of testing allowances, but honestly, they've made no difference at all inside this game there. So yeah, Paul Aaron, the young Estonian, and Zach O'Sullivan, of course, the local lad for me. I was trying to cheer him on last year, but we didn't really ever see him, to be honest. And yeah, both of them had a pretty testing campaign. I think, again, though, obviously with the shockwaves going through the Red Bull family with Verstappen's retirement, they don't want to rock the boat too much. They want us to kind of see how their drivers can get on, but they desperately need to bring some upgrades to that VCarb car because they are not looking particularly good as we head into the new campaign. That'll do it, though. All of our new driver lineups are ready for this season. Like I said, 7 different teams with new drivers, or obviously changed around drivers, ready for this campaign. We also do now have a new and improved calendar as well for the course of the year. Of course, understandably, we start here in Australia. We then head straight over to Bahrain and Saudi Arabia for a Middle Eastern doubleheader before we return to Imola and then Barcelona before the Canadian Grand Prix. Austria and then Silverstone, and then obviously the Belgian Grand Prix right before the summer break before we head to reverse Zandvoort after that. Italy, obviously the Italian Grand Prix before we head to Baku, Singapore, and then Brazil just before Vegas and Qatar there. So 3 sprint weekends over the course of the campaign, 2 of them coming right at the very end of the season. Some subtle changes to what we saw last campaign, but I think this strikes a good balance of history, but also generally providing the races that give the best runs as well, of course. So yeah, if you're new, please do make sure to leave a like, get yourself subscribed. I hope you guys are as hyped as I am, ready for the new season. Of course, you can click the join button down below as well if you want access to round 1 right now when this video goes live to the general public as well. I'm really confident, though. I think this is going to be a big year for Cadillac. I'm hoping Oscar Piastri can really help us out as well. But yeah, that's going to do us for this one, though. The Australian Grand Prix will be going live tomorrow. Make sure, like I said, you don't miss it. Hit that notification bell so you definitely don't. But yeah, we'll be back very soon with more Formula 1 content.